exciting!
This is so exciting. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Helen Vonderheide.
Lily Marks.
Talking about all things Akashic Records, healing. Honestly, we're gonna speak off the cuff.
Yeah.
And share a little bit about what we do. And I'm really excited to hear your feelings. We're friends, we're colleagues, you're my teacher. So I'm excited to do this live and Deep Cuts for Liberate Hollywood.
Yeah. Yes. So this is a Deep Cuts episode. Deep Cuts is where practitioners basically sidebar and go into some of the deeper topics, questions or themes that the world faces, and then as practitioners how we can be of support. So this is Lily Marks and Helen Vonderheide's Deep Cuts. So Lily, why don't you start off by telling everyone who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, I'm Lily Marks. I'm Lily Marks. We have a lot of cameras going at once, so who am I? I am an Akashic Records reader and practitioner, as well as an energy healer. I do clearings in the subconscious mind. In my practice, I combine the two. Sometimes doing clearings with the records open, sometimes each individually. My intention with it all is that when we have clarity on our lives, sometimes that works as confirmation for our hunches, our worries, our insecurities about the future, and we can get confirmation from the unseen, like the Akasha, and then once we have that clarity, then clearing the energy such that the path is open and we can receive what's meant for us in this lifetime.
I love that. But separate of being a light worker, you are also an artist.
I am a writer as well as a trained actress, and for much of my life before I reached the Akashic Records and all of my healing modalities, I was a creative.
Aww.
Yeah.
I want to hear about how you bring the two of those together, but one thing that you talked about or just mentioned that I really love is supporting the subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what does that mean? Like, if someone was coming to this for the first time, what would that mean for someone new?
Okay, so I love your questions, by the way. And I want to hear you. So I'm going to answer that. But what I realized is we both approach the same subject from different angles.
Uh-huh.
So after I explain what it means to me, I want to hear what it means to you.
Okay.
So when I say the subconscious mind, I'm talking about energy that's unseen for us. So our whole reality comes from the unconscious mind. 5% is conscious. So there's a lot going on that we can't see. Limiting beliefs, past lives, energy in our field that we pick up from other people that we meet along the way, traumatic experiences, both in this life and past lives, ancestral patterns. And that's making up essentially, like, I see it as our energy field. And we're not conscious of it, but it affects us on a cellular level. So when I refer to the unconscious, I mean that. Programming in the brain and in that's imprinted in us. Does that answer your question?
It does.
That make sense?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It also reminds me, so Yaron and I did a Deep Cuts, and one of the things that he was talking about, and what Dolores Cannon also talks about, is this like subconscious mind, which has this this like supreme intelligence, like it holds everything. And then when he facilitates his session, for a person to kind of come into awareness of maybe like their themes or their lessons, or whatever the enlightened perspective is, he basically they will tune into their higher self. So yeah, a lot of what you're talking touching base on, it kind of reminds me of some of the things that we were talking about too. Yeah, and I feel the same way. And a really easy way for me to describe it to people is it's kind of like it's like your cell phone, and it's when the location services is like on, and it's like it kind of is like tracking everything, and it's like definitely taking up space.
Don't make me think your phone is always listening to you. It's always hearing you.
But that's the subconscious. Like it's always listening. It's always impressing. It's always like programming. It knows what's safe or what's okay. Oh, alert, that's dangerous or whatever. So it makes so much sense that the healing work that you do really kind of like is like kind of getting into the roots of this like subconscious to create these clearings for people.
It's so funny because in my interview with Christina on the Liberate podcast, we were talking about how all of this energy is unseen. Mm-hmm. It's like a spiritual Wi-Fi, and when we want to access it, we can type something into Google and we can get the answers. We can call on our guides, our masters, teachers, and loved ones. And she was equating it to, I don't know how the cell phone works, but I know it's working when I call someone like across an ocean. I wanted to ask you, because when you go into someone's records, wouldn't you say that in a way it's not the subconscious, but you're working with the unseen?
Yes.
So how would you describe that, or the difference? Because it is that it's like the soul's knowing, or in a way it's kind of the same.
I love this question because there is a little daily practice that I do every morning, and what I do is I tune into my higher self, and I ask, and the way that I do that is I kind of like call upon it 3 times, and then I hear it answer me. And I started to investigate this communication. Like, where is this coming from? Like, how are you connected to me? And what was revealed to me is, the higher self is an extension of the human self. It has an elevated perspective of our life, but it acts as an intermediary between my masters, teachers, and loved ones that sometimes I can ordinarily access. I can't access them the way that I do with this pathway that I use. So, like, when I'm trying to just access them intuitively, I actually don't get the, like, gusto of them. So what happens is my higher self acts as my messenger. It's like kind of like delivering the messages and things that I need. So, ask your question one more time.
Ask my question one more time. My question was, when you ask me about the subconscious, how do you think that applies with the records? Because in a way it's unseen.
Right.
And we could argue your guides and your masters and teachers of loved ones are a part of your subconscious. They're not, but they are.
Yes, yeah. So the way that I see it is not that, so I want to talk about like vibration and frequency and energy, and when there is matter attached to like vibration and frequencies, there's like a scale, right, of like how high or how medium or low or whatever, and it doesn't mean anything is like good or bad. The masters, teachers, and loved ones, they are non-physical. They have like no attachment, no physical body. They act as one, and so their vibration is really high. They have this like very huge perspective of like, I feel like the destiny of the soul, probably like future lifetimes. But then the higher self, it's connected to the physical human, and so that the elevation of that vibration is a little bit lower to earth, but also still very elevated. So when I'm working in the records with this unseen energy, what I feel is I kind of like blast through all of these like layers of vibration and frequency, and I try to attain the highest, lightest perspective I can to guide someone, but also need to make really sure that whatever that guidance and insight is, it is like grounded enough for a human being to apply it. Because sometimes, as you know, they talk in metaphor, and
They say the weirdest things.
Oh my gosh, I know.
What does that mean?
I know. It's like, oh my God, you guys don't even know what it's like to be human.
Yeah.
And like some of them do and some of them really don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to like find this balance. Like always, I feel like I'm always working with a balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel also like what I do is I help people see what they can't see in like this unseen sphere because it is non-physical.
Is it separate from them? And this is something I know, because ultimately it doesn't matter because we experience the experience and it's coming from something that's attached to the human being.
Mm-hmm.
But this unseen energy, especially in the Akashic records, what is your theory? Do you think that it's an energy that's separate from the human, or do you think that you're tapping into their field?
They always say we are one. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times when they're talking, they address someone as dear one or like sweet one or, you know, whatever they want to say. So they always address us as one, like we are you, you are us. That being said, if I as a human being am experiencing self-abandonment, my availability to be a part of that oneness is affected. In other words, if I'm experiencing states of self-abandonment, like, you know, I don't want to go there, I don't want to look this, I don't want to deal with it, it makes it a little bit harder for me to connect into the oneness of like all things.
Yeah.
I'll still get little fragments and pieces, but if I'm not fully like within myself, then my access to everything is a little, you know, I wouldn't say limited, but you know, it's a little bit less.
It's harder to hear.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I definitely relate to that both when doing Akashic readings and the energy clearing, that when a client resonates, even if I'm talking about something that's a totally different lifetime, they don't know why, but they're brought to tears. And it's because somewhere inside of them, they know it to be the truth. But we as humans, and I know, you know, it's easier to step back from the painting because with myself, it's sometimes harder to see.
Yeah.
But that energy field is in them somewhere because they can feel it. And I know with myself too, when something makes sense, it just makes sense. That's sort of what you just said like brings up in me, is that we choose to detach, or at least I have in the past chosen to, what was the word you said, not disassociate, but self-abandonment, or, you know, and going for healing or going for a reading, the purpose is sometimes realignment.
Yeah.
To hear, oh, these are my soul level truths, that resonates. So ultimately, I already knew that, but hearing it from you makes me own it or something, or like find it again. And then sometimes totally the opposite. The records say something totally nutso. And then it ends up being right too. Do you have any stories about the records saying things that are crazy and then living it out and they ended up being like totally on point?
Well, yeah, my biggest personal experience to date is when I took the manifesting course with Linda back in 2015, they were showing me, it was like the Discover course and the manifesting course. And they were showing me that I would see working in the records and then, you know, having my producing experiences too. And they kept saying that they're one. And I was like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And now finally, after it's been like 3 years or something, or 4 years, they like 100% have like merged into like one. And I specifically remember telling them, like, you guys are crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. There's no way these two things are one. They're so separate and different. But then when it starts to come together, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. You guys were right.
And we're so impatient because we think, you know, we want to see it now versus 3 years is not that long.
Yeah.
to ultimately be seeing the fruits of your patience. I'm not gonna say the fruits of your labor, but the labor too, but like just be patient and see.
And the crazy thing is the way, so I work in my records a lot, specifically for guidance and direction, and all of these like little steps that they've guided and directed me on have like led me to basically this like oneness of like my professional work, where I couldn't see that those little steps I was taking was going to eventually merge into this.
What choices, or what allowed you to put your faith in following those little steps in the records?
If nothing else, connecting with their energy would bring me so much peace. Mm-hmm. And I would feel so overcome with emotion, like, okay, maybe not everything is perfect, you know, about this relationship that we have.
Yeah.
But not only are you guys bringing me peace, but I feel seen, heard, understood. I feel loved. So like when I work in my records, I just feel this extraordinary amount of love like coming from my chest, and it's coming from them. Like, we love you so much. We thank you so much. Like, you know, you're doing what you're doing because you're supporting us and basically just bringing this like peace to the world. It's definitely an inner journey. It's an inner journey of illumination, discovery, development, growth. So you have to first come back to yourself in order to like see how all these bigger things on the path are gonna come together and work.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's so funny. What about me?
Well, you were asking like for a very personal experience about how something from the records might have felt a little absurd.
Very personal. That felt absurd.
Yeah, but then was like, oh.
I'm trying to think. There's been a few times, both when I've had, because I started out getting a lot of readings from you. And that's actually, this is a side note, but for anyone who's looking to be an Akashic Records or be a healer, I found that because I received so much healing, when I finally wanted to learn several years ago, it was really easy for me to like access it.
Yeah.
So I started out getting a lot of readings from you, but also myself, and it's been little things like it's asking about boys and then being like no, and me being like yes, why not, and then being like no, and then it unfolds. But it's interesting because the records also hold out the highest possibility, and then sometimes I'm the one shutting it down, and they kind of say, why would you, you know. There have been a few things like there was an opportunity that was presented to me,
professionally or romantically.
It was to coach a program.
Okay.
And we did a reading, and I kept being like, I want to do this, but I don't know why, but it like there's something in me that's like I can't quite get myself to do it, and everything looks great. I love the people. I love the people in charge. It feels like the right time. And there was like this blue light around me and my throat chakra, and there was stuff around healing, and I had totally forgotten about it, but there was just something that I couldn't pull the trigger on jumping into this experience. And then I looked back in retrospect, and I, found a deep part of my physical healing by not being a part of this, because it would have taken a lot of rigorous energy, and it allowed me to heal my body in terms of finding the medical medium and finding celery juice, which that's a whole nother deep cut. But healing chronic illness that's lasted 10 years within the span of 3 months, really healing a chunk of it. And then also on some major date conflicts, I got hand, foot, and mouth disease from my baby cousins. And when I looked back at, you're going to have some major health things, and it wasn't even a prediction, because the Akashic Records are not really about predicting, they're about guidance and clarity in the moment. But looking back, when I looked back at that last 4 months, when we had been looking forward, I realized, because it kind of felt like, what is this? And then I looked back and I went, oh my gosh, the last 4 months have totally been about my healing. If I had taken that on, I would have been so stressed, and
Wow.
and I would have been so sick at certain points that I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
So things like that happen all the time. I don't think that I have just one.
Wow, that's so amazing.
And I've tried to find loopholes of, well, that's not true. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to see my baby cut, but everything checked out. The trip was always planned. Those dates didn't conflict. I looked at every scenario and I'm like, there's no possible scenario that it wouldn't have happened that way.
Yeah.
So things like that, I have so many stories like that.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing because it's like we are trusting in this like cosmic self. Like the masters, teachers, and loved ones, they have this perspective like from the cosmic.
It's like a bird's eye view.
Yeah, and it's like they can see these like bigger themes, maybe not all the details. They can see these bigger themes and how we're kind of being navigated, and they're like, "Oh, don't go there, Helen. Like if you turn here, like this will be a much smoother transition or whatever." And what's crazy is we do trust it, and why do we trust it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say personally, I have. Did you hear that? Was that the
I
camera?
did hear that.
I don't know. Do we think the camera clicked off?
I think we might have heard the camera click off.
Should we get Rebecca or should we continue with the live?
We should look at the camera. We're going to look at the camera. Please stay tuned.
Yeah. I love our off-the-cuff conversation. What was the question? Oh, so I, for years, did not trust them. For years, I did not want to be a healer. I did not want to be an intuitive. I resisted the gifts. And even in readings, I would get readings and I would find every way to resist and prove it wrong. Mm-hmm. And at some point, that just got tiring. So now that I trust it, the question was, what makes us trust?
Yeah.
I think...
I loved your answer, though. Like, it got tiring to resist.
Yeah. I just wanted peace.
Yes. And I think that for me is the biggest thing that I get out of the records is in trusting is peace. What about you? What's the biggest thing that you get out of it?
Well, one other thing I would add to that is ultimately we're going to the same place. And I think what I just realized as I matured was it felt like decisions were really huge. And if I chose one, it was going to be wrong. And now I have surrendered that. Mm-hmm. The question you asked was, what's the biggest thing I get from the records? God, so much love, creativity, clarity. It feels, going into the Akashic Records for me kind of feels like it's one of the ways as an adult to access that like imaginative, like place you would go as a kid. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like a playground in a lot of ways. And it feels like a place where I really can trust and let go. So when I go into my own records, it's like fun and it's comforting and calming because, and this is something I heard Linda Howe say this, and I'll come back to it again and again, that after 30 years she still wonders, will anything happen when I do this? And Linda Howe is like the mama of Akashic Records. She's the pro. She's the teacher of all teachers. And she even has that moment of choosing to surrender. So it's a really powerful feeling to open them and go, oh wow, I can hear this voice, my voice, so clearly, but it's not my voice. Right. And it's the deepest feeling of self-trust that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah. I loved that you touched on creativity. Let's talk about that.
Yes, let's talk about
it. What's really fun about Liberate Hollywood, it's, their whole motto is where creativity and spirituality collide or come together. So, and Lily is a creative. She's an artist. She's a writer, a performer. I'm a producer, I'm a storyteller.
That's why we're friends.
I know. And then we also have these, amazing skills to bring this work to humanity, this, Akashic work, this healing work, this, clearing the subconscious. So let's talk about creativity. Like, how does that get woven into our lives?
The first thing that comes up for me when you spoke so eloquently just now is
if anyone knows me, I do not speak eloquently.
You do. That was so eloquent. I was saying before our live that this is the first time we're hanging out in a while, and it just feels so nice to be with Helen. The first thing that comes up to me is the point where like spirituality, intuition, and creativity intersect. There's two things that come up for me. One is that they take the same thing out of us as artists, as producers, and then as healers, as writers. We become a vessel. Mm-hmm. And art takes such a deep amount of surrender, of let me offer myself up to something bigger than myself and let it flow through me. Mm-hmm. And the best acting I've ever done, and they always say, listen and respond. Healing and Akashic Records takes deep listening. And the other thing is just being the vessel, letting the inspiration pass through me and serving the art.
Yeah.
And that's what we do as practitioners. Serve the message. Sometimes when I'm doing a reading, I don't know if this happens for you, they'll give me one answer, and until I just say it, they won't give me any more.
Yes, they do that to me too. And then I always think, like, I get in my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, but this answer sounds so awkward. I can't say this. And it'll be the same one every time because I'll keep asking over and over.
And my theory on that is I'm just the vessel. So until I say this, until I report, until I let it pass through me, they're not going to give me any more. So at times when I felt stopped up with my creativity, or I've let my insecurities get in the way, or my self-worth conversations, my question has always been, how do I get back to just like letting the art come out? And so, and then the other thing that comes up about this and creativity is, and this was sort of the topic when I talked to Christina, was in order to be the conduit of the records or whatever we call it, it takes letting go. It takes surrender. It takes getting out of the way. And with art, in order to come to a clean canvas, or life even, letting go of the future, letting go of the past, and being here now. So this idea of surrender, I think, applies to both being in the spiritual world and being in the creative world. It's how do I surrender all the things that are telling me no? How do I surrender all the doubts of, is this real? I'm looking at the air right now. How do I surrender the fact that people are telling me I can't do it, I'll never make money, I'll never, people will never understand, and get that shit out of the way. So those are my two things. Yeah. And they're like, being the vessel is also about surrender. But.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that so much. Because it makes me think about when I start to, like, being the vessel, when I start to, like, analyze the insight that I'm getting, first thing I notice is, like, I get a kind of crinkly forehead. So that means I'm processing it too much in my mind. But basically but it's almost like my analyzing of it creates this resistance, and then it's very hard for it to flow. And so in my mind, it's like, the part of me that wants to analyze, like, whatever the energy and insight is, it's like they have a battle until finally I realize, like you said, it's just like taking up too much time. And so then I'm like, okay, fine, blah, here you go, like, whatever it is. And I noticed that from my process when I do the monthly messages. Like, I really, like, because it's so in the moment, like, I'm not going back and editing. I can't, like, change anything. Like, whatever comes is whatever comes. So, when I start to get in my head and, like, analyze it, I can, like, tell that I'm, like, getting a little bit, like, tense. And then eventually it's like, okay, I just have to let go. It's such an interesting Receive, let go.
Is that the end of what you were
Yeah.
saying? Because I wanted to ask you, what do you think that, like, what causes you to analyze? Like, when you start to analyze, what's the worry, or what?
Yeah, the worry is this gonna make sense?
Yeah.
And what we learn as practitioners is that it's not supposed to make sense to us. Like when I'm teaching the students, you know, sometimes they get so afraid to deliver because they are afraid of how they're going to be judged or if it's imperfect, and they kind of get tripped up on it. And what I always say is, like, you know, probably 9 times out of 10, it's not going to make sense to you. It's going to make sense to the receivers of the transmission.
Oh my gosh, how true. Like, I'll say a sentence and I'm like, fine, I guess I'll say this. And then I say it and the person's like, the biggest lesson I ever learned was in a healing class with Gars Chan and Yusan Shin. Oh my, it's fine. When they, well, and I was so resistant to start talking because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to, you know, say something weird.
Yeah.
And I was getting a certification with them, and they both implored me, just open your mouth and start talking. And it was the best advice I ever got in terms of any of this. Just open your mouth and start talking. I had another question for you, and then I wanted to interject. So I asked you why you analyzed, and then I wanted to ask you, oh, darn it. It was about you were saying, we were talking about creativity, and then you were saying that thing of when I start to analyze and then getting out of your own way. And I said, what makes you analyze? And then I wanted to, this is what I wanted to ask you. When you're doing readings, do you ever have, because I was always taught this is not about me, get myself out of the way. And occasionally, I'll get a memory of my own in the reading. Do you ever have that where something from your life will come in?
Yes.
So how have you resolved that?
So
I have my own thing.
Yeah.
I want to see if it's similar to yours.
So what's interesting is because I've asked about that in my records.
Yeah.
And what they say is, it's not, the reason, like, we're showing you this is because the themes and lessons you experienced with this situation are exactly what this person is going through. So you know how to communicate to them the best ways that they can support themselves through whatever that is. So it's always like, you know, I know, because that just happened to me recently, where I was like, oh, I got to make sure that that's not me. And I'll check in with them, and they're like, nope, we're just showing you this because of that reason.
Yeah, that's the exact same answer I got, actually.
Okay.
And it's funny because I think as a beginning practitioner, I always was worried my own ego would get in the way.
Yeah.
I was really worried that I was going to give inaccurate information and then, like, you know, analyze it. And now it's not that goes away. It's just when it comes up, I say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And then the deeper cut was once I stopped analyzing, once I started talking, and I was able to trust myself, then occasionally I would have an experience like that. And so I think that that's the next, for anyone who's starting out on their journey with all of this, the next part was, oh, maybe I'm getting that for a reason now.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely, you know, I'm focused on this person. It's not about me. And it was just a trip when that started happening.
Yeah. It's rare that those do happen,
It's
but
rare.
I love that you brought that up, because I think that is one of the biggest things that makes someone who starts working with non-physical energy feel like it's their ego or it's them. And then as a teacher, I say, no, it's because you experienced that they're bringing that to your awareness so that you can help the person that you're helping.
Yeah. Learning the difference between ego and whatever that inner voices, or however the records speak to you, is definitely in that first part.
I know.
Speaking of ego, well, earlier you were saying that you had an exploration of light and dark, and that you were musing on that.
Yeah, so I was asking for just like some insight into what Lily and I could talk about today. And prior to me asking, I was looking at so I created an Akashic Records practitioner handbook. And the handbook is all the questions that my students have asked me, and then all the questions that I've asked in my records, like since being a practitioner and a teacher. So this handbook is basically a compilation of all of this. And there's a chapter inside the handbook called Dichotomy of the Worlds. And it's essentially light and dark. And light and dark as it makes up a whole. So I was looking at that chapter in the book because it's being edited. And so then looked at that, whatever, closed it. And then I was working in my records and I was like, okay, so what should Lily and I talk about? And they were like, actually, this is the topic, or this is a suggestive topic that you guys can explore, which is the world of light and dark and what that means. So a lot of people have, heard about shadow self, shadow work, the light, like when we're working in the Akashic Records, it's essentially, we're very specific about accessing the light of the Akashic Records, knowing very well that Akasha is light and dark, which makes it whole, but we're very deliberate about going to the light. The light, in my opinion, is what facilitates the healing, the release.
Yeah.
So I just want to I don't know if that, it's kind of, it's not a structured question, but I just want to throw this idea of light and dark out into our combo and see if anything like comes to you about that.
There's a lot. I think, okay, two things come up in this moment.
Yeah.
One is the concept that for many years I thought that I needed to be healed in order to heal others. And I dispelled that belief for my greater good and for the greater good of everyone else. Because I think we're all, even the Pope, or even whoever the highest healer, the most enlightened person is in the world, I truly believe there's always light and dark, and the things that we've conquered as human beings will always come up. It's a matter of mastering something, is a matter of, okay, when that thing comes up, when that self-doubt comes up and I'm giving a reading, I very quickly now can say, no, thank you. And that without one, we don't have the other. And I was actually talking to someone this morning who told me that people are telling him he's a healer and he's starting to believe it. And we had this really profound conversation because I said, the reason that you're a healer is because you've experienced trauma in your life. You've experienced pain and people have excluded you. And what makes us able to feel, a lot of healers have experiences in their past where they've left their bodies, where they've had to learn how to leave their bodies so that they can cope. And the course of a healer's life, I believe, is you're born with gifts, you're a super sensitive and intuitive child, and then all this stuff happens, and then something brings you back into discovering and processing the pain such that you can be your authentic self. But it's that pain, it's that darkness that allows us to relate to others. It's what allows us to be sensitized to the energies of the unseen. And so it's really about changing the interpretation of what the dark means.
Yeah.
And seeing it as an asset. And that's something I personally work on daily. So, like you said, both energies are there, but it's not the dark is bad, I only want to live in the light. It's the light is so much sweeter because of the dark.
Yeah. I love that. They gave me this perspective on it which to me was like so amazing. They were talking about the sun as like the light, and they were saying sometimes you need to be in the shade to just have a break, to like get a break from like, because the truth is, you know, it feels like it would be not impossible to like fully be in our light self, but because the planet is not fully in its light self, like the vibration would just be so incompatible with the collective. Like
if it was light all the time?
If it was light all the time. Like, you know, if the planet was illuminated by the sun 24 hours a day, we would be exhausted. Nobody would rest. So it's like the darkness, you know, the night, it gives us an opportunity to like take a break, you know, go inward, self-care, heal, address the things that we need to look at.
That's so beautiful.
I know.
That recharge, it's that idea of you must receive in order to give.
Yeah.
Because once you've put it out, it must come in so it can go out again.
Right.
It's like the sunrise is so exciting and beautiful, and the sunset, this is poetical, but the sunset's like a wedding. It's like happy and sad at the same time because the sun is leaving, but then it comes up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that recharging, I would say, is definitely a theme in the work we do too.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
I know, it made so much sense to me because I think a lot of the times, like when community is talking about shadow self or darkness, we could be afraid of it, right? There's a fear. And I think from that perspective, it became very empowering. Mm-hmm. Like, oh no, this isn't anything that I need to be afraid of. Like, this too shall pass.
You know, it's the same as people being afraid of dark energies, because so many people in this world are empathic and like sponges. And for years I would pick up energy and not know where it came from, and it was really debilitating. Oh. But I've really learned that there's no energy that can hurt me.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people like newly in this work are like, oh, I realized I bring on people's energies, I take them on, and this is bad because it makes me feel bad. Versus if I know how to set the boundary, then nothing can hurt me. Another thing that you said that I think is so interesting is, my brain is on overdrive because I'm so excited. But it reminded me of Brené Brown puts a Theodore Roosevelt quote in her book. It's the man in the arena quote. I've read it to you before, actually. I think I read it in the workshop I taught. I won't go over the quote, but it's essentially, the beginning of the quote is, it's not the critic who counts. She goes on to talk about Theodore Roosevelt, not Brené Brown, goes on to talk about the man or woman in the arena. And it's not about always being, what it reminds me of, it's not about always being the light or always succeeding. It's about, I would rather follow the person who's trying and maybe failing and having the courage to do that. And I think as practitioners who only want to be in light and want to be really good, there was that fear of, oh, if I'm not completely healed, who am I to heal?
Oh, yeah.
Versus what I compel my clients to do is to be brave with the healing. So I get to do that myself. So embracing, practicing what I preach, embracing the dark, embracing those fears, and turning them into something else. I don't do it perfectly, but I strive to.
Yeah.
Well,
it makes me think about one of the things that we learn in Linda's work is, it's like finite, human, infinite soul. And, it's like this perfection versus, human imperfection versus this soul level perfection. And then it also makes me think about light and dark. Like these two are always meant to be, we're always meant to find our balance with it.
Human imperfection versus soul level perfection. Tell me more about that.
Oh.
This is new.
Oh, you know why? Because it's in the advanced certification.
Oh,
is
right.
we start getting into it. So
Okay.
what happens, so
I've done Linda's classes, and
yeah,
I've done a few of
so
yours,
yeah,
but not that one.
Lily she's advanced and she's taken the classes with Linda, but there literally is an
There's like
advanced
6
certification. There's 5 practitioner, and then the teacher certification, I guess, would be the 6th.
Got it. Okay.
So there is, which is so funny that it's like such a paradox. But we start to talk about, basically just like the soul perfection. We'll just start from there. Oh my God, I have the best story to share around it, and hopefully my older sister doesn't kill me for sharing it. But so the soul perfection is that, we are whole, perfect, and just absolutely this like unconditionally loved soul. And then the human imperfection is that through our conditionings and beliefs and judgments and whatever else is like we start to see ourselves as imperfect. And basically when we start to work in the records, our goal is to come into that soul perfection. Is like, yes, it is imperfect here. We may have had imperfect parents or imperfect teachers or imperfect authorities. Like being human is imperfect, it just is. But what the Course is teaching you is like, yes, all these things on earth may be imperfect. However, like you at your like immutable core are perfect. Like you are this perfect soul. And so in that work, we start to come into awareness of it through like a lot of exercises. And then the story that I wanted to share, oh my God, I just like love it so much. So my nephew is young. He's the eldest of 3. I think he's 6 now. And, my older sister and her family, they go to church every Sunday. And so my eldest nephew is learning a lot about God. And, and that all of God's children are perfect. So one day, he was talking to his mom, my sister, about something, and, so he had made a mistake. Like something happened, he made a mistake, and he had to learn a lesson. And my older sister was like, okay, what did you learn about this? And so they're kind of going back and forth. And then ultimately, like something he said was, well, I don't know why I failed. I don't know why I made a mistake because I'm perfect. And I know it's so precious. And so my sister's, perspective was, but only God is perfect. Okay. And she's right, but she's also missing an important piece, Sure. That it's like us on the human earth plane is imperfect, right? Like something happened that was imperfect.
Sure.
But that we also come from this source of perfection.
Yeah.
So it's like coming, it's just remembering that we're one with this, and that we are this, and that even though there are these like imperfect things that, unfold in our life, like, the ultimate truth is that we like come from this source of being whole, complete, perfect, loved. We are love. Yeah. It was like such a, and I must have just got done teaching an advanced course. It was like really fresh on my mind. She was just sharing the story with me, and I was like, oh, well, actually he's right. And like, I would like share with her why. I was like, because, no. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. That's such an amazing story in so many ways, because what it brings up is like a totally other random question though, is what, like, it's an interesting thing because she's coming from a religious place, right? She's coming from a place of, do you say Catholicism? They're Catholic? Uh-huh. So the reason I'm pausing is because 2 totally different trains of thought came out of that story. It brought up a lot for me.
Yeah.
One is that he's this little kid, and I heard this spiritual analogy that before we come into this life, because we're supposed to learn these lessons, like all the cast of characters are lined up like before a play. and the villains are like there, and the lovers are there, and they're all circled around, like getting ready to go on. So right now they're just actors preparing for a play. They're an ensemble. They're doing warm-up games. They're super excited, and the soul is standing in the middle, and they're like cheering the soul, and they're like, I'm gonna be so mean to you. Like the villain is saying that you're gonna learn so many things, but they're like all on the same team. And then we come into this life and we forget that it's a cast of characters teaching us our soul's purpose so that we can learn. I just hit the mic. And it just reminded me of that. But the question I wanted to ask you was, what do you do with people? Do you get people coming for readings who are non-believers or who are cautious that it might be like a religious thing?
So my mom raised us Catholic. So when I told her I started doing this work, she was like, that's against my religion. So I said, Mom, your daughter, like, I am your daughter. Like, put your religion off to the side for a moment and, like, let me share this gift with you. Which actually she has the Akashic gift. She was in one of my Akashic... She's opened up more and more over the years because the work has been just so impactful in my life that she's opened up to it. And she likes readings because she likes to connect with her loved ones, people that have passed away. So she's not...
You've given your mom readings?
Yeah, I give my mom readings. So she's not so much about, like, the guidance and the direction in her life, but more just, like, closure or connection. Wow. But eventually she just, like, let the whole Catholic thing go, like, it being against her religion. But I never pressed it on her. I never forced it. It was just like, Mom, I have this gift. Can I practice this on you? And she was like, it's against my religion. I was like, okay. And I never said anything else. And then she just came to me over time. And then she's had, like, a few. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. An atheist. So I had an, like, super, like, hardcore atheist come to me, and it was a friend, and I was like, hey, can I, for my teacher training, I need to do these practice readings, can I do a practice reading on you? And he was open enough to come in for a reading, but after the reading, I don't know if he's still atheist, but he believed in something. Like, I had this man in tears. Aww. Yeah, so that was pretty incredible, down to, I remember, like, the most strict religious person that I read for, who may have still had, like, their judgments and opinions about everything, but was, like, open and willing enough to experience it. And everyone's going to find their own place with it, but that's the thing, like, these, whatever those beliefs and judgments that are, like, imposed upon us, they really distort what we can identify as our truth. And so something inside this person was like, I want you to experience this reading, this, like, soul reading, this Akashic reading. Something inside, probably their soul, is like, I want you to experience it enough where they could just, like, probably let go of, like, their judgment or opinions. And then they experience whatever they're meant to experience from it. And it's whatever that exchange is like, perfect, and I let it go. I don't worry if, like, the things that I said made sense or if they enjoyed it or not, or what do they think about me after I did it. I just, like, I trust and I let it go.
It's all you can do.
I know. What about you with religion? Beliefs? Because you're Jewish.
I am Jewish. I wasn't raised super religious, though. Oh, there's my phone on 10%. I wasn't raised super religious. We were Reform Jews, so what was great about where I was raised and the synagogue I was raised was very social action minded and very inclusive of the, we had a lesbian rabbi, like, so a lot of the like tenets of classical religion and everything that really religious communities are against, we were for. And my parents took me to meditation classes at a very young age. I remember they took me before Gurmukh, who's the Kundalini teacher who opened Golden Bridge, which is now Wanderlust. They took me to her house for a yoga class when I was like 5. And so they were very open to things like that. So I wasn't taught to believe that it was wrong. But I definitely have myself, what has come up, this is not religion, but it's belief system, is how is this legit? Like, well, people ever think this is legit? Like, if I was a lawyer, people would take me seriously. And I would say that that's a very Jewish way of thinking. You know, just a generation ago, my dad was told, you'll be a lawyer or you'll be a doctor. And he didn't like blood. He almost fainted when they had to dissect the frog in high school. And he says, so I knew I was going to be a lawyer. There was no choice involved. Oh. So kind of like your nephew where his mom said, you're perfect. You know, I grew up kind of being told, you can do whatever you want. But there's this, it's just a very Jewish thing to be like, but as long as you're successful and you make a lot of money and like, it's respectable and you know what I mean? So it was those dual conversations. So for a long time I had a lot of anxiety about telling people, hey, this is what I do. Because people are like, what? What's that? And I've had a few of my parents' friends be like, can you define Akashic? You know, so for a while it felt a little bit like this double life sort of thing. So I don't know if it's better or worse. It didn't feel like a religious thing, but I think that the Jew is ingrained in my blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there was certainly judgment of myself at the beginning.
Yeah.
Couldn't I just be a lawyer? Like, why have to be an actress and a healer? Like, what is that gonna look like to the rabbi?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh,
I feel like we have so many more things we could talk about.
I know.
We'll have to do this again.
Yes, we will do this again. So this is Lily and I's first Deep Cuts episode, but Lily leads an Akashic Records meditation here. Do you want to tell people?
It's Thursdays at 3. There's talk about possibly changing the time. Right now it's Thursdays at 3. I also I have my private Akashic Records practice, as well as giving readings through Liberate. So definitely call here. My website is lilyrosehealing.com. What about you, Helen?
Yeah.
Helen works here too.
Yes, I'm here Wednesdays 1 to 9. Teaching certification. I have a certification coming up at the end of August here. So yeah, we're Liberate fam. And then my website is justbetruetoyou.com.
Just be true to you, but it's BEE, like an animal.
I know. And then the number 2. Sorry to make it complicated.
It's not complicated.
But it kind of is. I didn't think about that.
Well, you're beautiful.
You are too.
I'm so glad that I feel like I learned so much.
I know, same
a lot
here.
Of brain candy.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you. So cute. All right, friends. We'll see you next time.